I first discovered Carla's cruelty one muggy summer evening, right before her bachelorette party. I remember the air feeling thick as I walked past the open windows, where the hum of cicadas mingled with the muffled traffic outside. I was reading a bedtime story to my 8-year-old daughter, Lily, who we adopted last year. The adoption process had been nerve-wracking and expensive, but from the moment Lily first clung to me, I knew our bond was unbreakable. She was ours, and I never thought to classify her in any other way. That night, Lily seemed oddly restless, her big brown eyes flickering toward the dark hallway every few seconds, as though expecting something, or someone, to appear. Though I didn't know it then, she'd already absorbed several of Carla's sharp jabs. Lily was trying to process it all in her own quiet way. At one point, she asked me if all families stay together. My heart constricted. I assured her that Aaron and I would always be her parents, no matter what. She offered me a small, tremulous smile, but I caught a flicker of uncertainty. Carla, on the other hand, had been gradually drifting from me for months. We grew up sharing secrets and sneaking out of our cramped suburban home to run through the sprinklers at night. But ever since I married Aaron and decided to adopt Lily, Carla's attitude had hardened. She'd comment on how complicated adoption was, how it might ruin my life, as if taking in a child who needed love was some catastrophic risk. I shrugged off her warnings at first, chalking it up to her natural bluntness. After all, Carla had always loved being provocative. However, seeing Lily's anxiety made me wonder if something darker simmered behind Carla's remarks. That evening, I tucked Lily into bed with an extra kiss on the forehead, silently vowing to keep her safe. I never imagined I'd have to protect her from my own flesh and blood. And yet, only after Carla's bachelorette party did I finally grasp the venom behind her words. She had called Lily a mistake in front of an entire group of people. I might have overlooked lesser insults, but that one seared itself into my mind, igniting a fury I hadn't known I possessed. The invitation to Carla's bachelorette party arrived on glossy cardstock, complete with images of neon lights and promises of fancy cocktails. I felt torn about attending. My sister and I had been close once, sharing birthdays and bedtime secrets. But lately, her barbs had grown sharper, and Lily's well-being was always on my mind. Still, I decided to go, hoping I could somehow salvage our bond, or at least confront her in a setting where she'd be less likely to brush me off. The rooftop bar was swanky, strung with rose gold balloons and framed by a neon sign that spelled out Carla's name in looping letters. I arrived to find a crowd of women dressed in black, sipping brightly colored drinks from mason jars. Carla was easy to spot. She stood in the center of the lounge wearing a tight white mini dress and a sash that read Bride-to-be. Under the pulsing glow of the city skyline, she radiated excitement and, to me, an undercurrent of smugness. I edged closer, exchanging polite greetings with a few women I vaguely recalled from her college years. Carla beckoned me over, swirling her champagne in a slender flute. "Well, if it isn't my big sister," she said with a grin that didn't touch her eyes. "Glad you showed up. Thought you might stay home with that kid of yours?" My stomach tightened. "Lily's fine," I replied, trying not to bristle. "Aaron's with her." Carla clicked her tongue. "I just figured you'd be too busy. You've got responsibilities now." She paused, scanning me from head to toe. "But good for you. Coming out for some fun." I tried to keep my composure and join in the festivities. Waiters circled with trays of appetizers. The bass thrummed through the floor. Carla drifted from group to group, collecting compliments about her ring, her dress, her meticulously sculpted nails. I sipped a fruity cocktail, feigning interest in a random conversation about someone's recent trip to Bali. Eventually, Carla slid onto a stool across from me. She leaned forward, a conspiratorial edge in her tone. "So, are you and Aaron still thinking about having real kids?" Heat climbed up my neck. "Lily is our real child," I said quietly. "She might not share our DNA, but she's ours in every sense." "Oh, don't get so dramatic," Carla waved a manicured hand. "I'm just saying you could still have a biological baby if you wanted to. Don't you think it's different? I mean, adopting is nice and all, but—" I stood abruptly, my heart pounding. "I need some air," I muttered, turning away. I didn't trust myself not to snap then and there. Outside on the open terrace, the wind felt cool against my flushed skin. I tried to calm down, forcing steady breaths, wondering how my sister could speak so callously about a child who was part of our family. When I went back in, Carla had gathered her closest friends in a corner booth, regaling them with stories of our shared childhood, some sweet, some humiliating. I hovered at the edge, unsure whether to rejoin. That was when I heard her laughter rise above the pulsing music. "My sister's so gullible," she said, her voice tinged with scorn. "She adopts this random kid, thinks everything's peachy. Honestly, you can't just pick up a child and expect it not to be a mistake at some point." A cold jolt of rage coursed through me. Carla's friends exchanged awkward glances, but none protested. Before I knew it, I slammed my palm down on the table, rattling the half-empty glasses. "Enough," I snapped, my voice trembling. "Lily is not a mistake. How dare you talk about her like that?" Carla blinked, momentarily startled. Then she rolled her eyes, lifting one shoulder. "Calm down, will you? It's just a joke. Nobody here actually cares." "Well, I care," I said, my voice wavering between fury and hurt. "You're talking about my child." Carla shrugged, unfazed. "Don't be so sensitive," she tossed back, leaning into one of her giggling bridesmaids. A spark of triumph lit her face, as though provoking me had been her plan all along. I could barely see through the red haze behind my eyes. Without another word, I spun on my heel and stormed out, ignoring the startled looks from the other guests. My pulse thundered as I rode the elevator down to the street, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. Carla had crossed a line, and I felt both betrayed and humiliated. She'd singled out Lily, an innocent child, just to watch me squirm. By the time I got home, I was still shaking with anger. Aaron hurried to the door, worry etched on his face. I explained what had happened, bracing for him to suggest we try to keep the peace. Instead, he set his jaw and pulled me into his arms. "I'm not letting Carla get away with this," he said, voice tight. "She doesn't deserve a place in Lily's life if she can't respect her." I nodded, tears slipping free at last. Lily's bedroom light was off, so I knew she was asleep. It killed me to imagine her ever overhearing such hateful words. We'd fought so hard to show Lily she was wanted, cherished, safe. Carla's remarks tore at those fragile assurances, reminding me just how vulnerable Lily still was. The next day, I waited until Lily was busy coloring in her room. I could hear the faint scratch of crayon on paper through the door. Taking a deep breath, I went in and sat beside her. "Sweetheart," I asked gently, "has Aunt Carla ever said anything that made you feel bad?" Lily's crayon paused mid-stroke. Her eyes flickered with worry. She said you and Dad might have real kids someday." Her voice came out so quiet I had to lean in to hear. "She said I shouldn't get too comfortable, 'cause you might change your mind. Is that true?" It felt like my heart was being squeezed by an iron fist. "Lily," I said, scooping her into a hug, "that's absolutely not true. We love you. We're never changing our minds." She nestled her face into my shoulder, and I could feel her trembling. "She told me not to tell, 'cause then you'd be mad and send me away." Anger surged, hot and fierce. How dare Carla manipulate Lily like that? I stroked her hair, breathing in the scent of shampoo. "I'll never send you away," I whispered. "You're our daughter, forever. Aunt Carla is the one who's wrong." We stayed like that for a long time, Lily clinging to me as though afraid I might vanish. Eventually, she seemed to calm, the tension easing from her small body. But I knew the damage had been done. Betrayal from a stranger was one thing, betrayal from family was another. I confronted Carla 2 days later. She was finalizing wedding arrangements at her townhouse, wearing a tank top that said bride in glittering letters. The living room was a mess of tool samples and half-finished wedding favors. She opened the door with an exasperated sigh. "If you're here to lecture me, don't bother," she said, flipping her manicured nails dismissively. "I have a million things to do." My anger threatened to boil over, but I forced my voice steady. "I know what you've been telling Lily. How dare you plant those fears in her head?" She arched an eyebrow, crossing her arms. "That kid is already damaged. She was abandoned once. She'll survive it happening again." My hand clenched around the strap of my purse. "We are not abandoning her. Ever. And I won't tolerate you feeding her lies." "Then don't bring her around me," Carla snapped. "Easy." I stared at her, realization dawning like a cold sunrise. She felt no remorse. She genuinely believed Lily was beneath her concern, as if my daughter was an accessory I'd foolishly acquired. "We're done," I said, my voice tight. "Until you learn to respect Lily, you stay away, from both of us." Carla smirked. Fine, suits me just fine. I left, the echo of her haughty expression burned into my mind. The wedding invitation arrived not long after, enveloped in shimmery paper with gold lettering. Aaron and I debated tossing it, but a part of me bristled at the idea of letting Carla's cruelty go unchallenged. Lily deserved a mother who would stand up for her, even in the face of family. In the days leading up to the wedding, I pored over articles on child psychology, trying to undo some of the damage Carla had inflicted. Lily remained subdued, sometimes waking from nightmares, asking if we'd still be here in the morning. I held her close and told her again and again that we were forever. Aaron, too, would tuck her in, whispering that she was stuck with us. We'd try to make her laugh with silly jokes, but the question in her eyes lingered. Why would Aunt Carla say those things? On the morning of the wedding, Lily wore a pale blue dress. I combed her hair into a simple style with a matching ribbon, determined that she feel beautiful and cherished. As we drove to the church, a swirl of anxiety and anger tumbled in my stomach. Aaron reached over to squeeze my hand, his gaze resolute. "We've got this," he said. Carla had transformed the church into a showpiece of white roses and shimmering crystals. Classical music played softly as guests found their seats. Mark, Carla's fiancé, stood at the altar, looking moderately anxious. I wondered if he had any inkling of how malicious Carla could be. We took seats near the middle. I pressed Lily's hand gently, and she offered me a tentative smile. The ceremony commenced with the usual solemnities. Carla glided down the aisle in a form-fitting gown, face aglow as if all her petty barbs had never existed. Part of me almost hoped she'd display a shred of remorse, but her eyes skipped right over me. When the priest declared them husband and wife, the congregation erupted in applause. Outside my line of sight, Lily fiddled with the hem of her dress, her brow creasing. The wedding music swelled, and Carla grinned like she'd just conquered the world. As the newlyweds swept out of the church, I held Lily close and whispered, "You're okay," reminding her that she was with us, no matter what Carla said or did. The reception hall was nothing short of extravagant. A crystal chandelier, tall centerpieces of white orchids, and flickering votive candles on every table. People buzzed with excitement, raising glasses in Carla and Mark's honor. Aaron and I took our seats at a round table near the edge of the dance floor, while Lily sat between us, quietly observing the spectacle. After a series of sappy toasts praising Carla's kind heart and Mark's patience, the DJ invited anyone else to speak. My pulse thudded as I rose, ignoring Aaron's concerned glance. This was my moment, the chance to shine a bright light on Carla's cruelty. I stepped up to the microphone. The murmur of conversation died down. Carla's face froze in a taut smile. "Carla," I began, my voice echoing through the speakers, "I want to wish you and Mark all the happiness in the world. Marriage is a partnership built on trust and understanding." I paused, letting the silence build. "It's also built on respect, especially for children who need our love. Like my daughter, Lily." A ripple of discomfort passed through the crowd. Carla's eyes narrowed, lips pursing. I continued, my hands trembling around the microphone. "I need everyone here to know that Lily is not a mistake. She's my daughter, and she deserves respect. Family is supposed to protect and nurture the vulnerable, not tear them down." People glanced at one another, confused. Carla's cheeks flamed, but she stayed rooted, flanked by her bridesmaids. My father stood halfway from his chair, brows knitted in alarm. Still, I pressed on. "I won't stand by while anyone, no matter how close, bullies her into believing she doesn't belong. Because she does. She belongs with us." With that, I lowered the microphone and walked back to my seat. A stunned silence lingered until the DJ awkwardly cleared his throat and tried to steer the event back to cheerful territory. But there was a crack in Carla's facade now. Whispered questions floated around. Lily peered up at me, eyes wide. I gave her hand a reassuring squeeze. Carla didn't speak to me for the remainder of the reception, though she threw me venomous glares whenever our eyes met. A few guests approached, quietly asking if everything was all right. I offered vague remarks that Carla and I had some differences, aware that the truth would spread on its own soon enough. My mother looked stricken, and my father seemed caught between shock and anger, though his confusion was mostly directed at Carla. We slipped out early, not wanting Lily to endure the tension any longer. As we walked across the hotel's marble lobby, Lily clung to me. Aaron guided us with a protective arm, and the three of us stepped into the warm evening air. Before we reached the car, Lily turned to me and whispered, "Mom, thank you." "For what, sweetie?" I asked, crouching down to look into her eyes. She bit her lip, tears brimming. "For saying I'm not a mistake. For saying I belong." My throat tightened. I gathered her close, pressing my cheek to her soft hair. "Lily, you belong with us forever. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Aaron's eyes shone with pride. He opened the car door, and Lily climbed in, looking calmer than she had in weeks. I slid into the passenger seat, exhaling the tension of the night. We drove away from the glitz and drama, forging our own little sanctuary under the streetlights. I didn't know what repercussions would follow, but I felt a sharp sense of relief. No matter what Carla did, Lily would remember that we stood up for her. It was 2 weeks later that I heard the fallout. My mother called, frantic, saying Mark had moved out. Apparently, during their honeymoon, Carla had made more nasty remarks about Lily, referring to her as a pathetic charity case. Mark overheard, and the argument that followed ripped open a chasm in their brand new marriage. Infuriated by her cruelty, he packed his bags and left, refusing to watch her demean a child. Carla, of course, spun the story differently when she called me. Sobbing so hard her words came in ragged gasps. She blamed me for ruining everything, accusing me of poisoning Mark's mind at the wedding. I listened, letting her accusations roll off my back. When she ran out of steam, I said, "You did this to yourself. What did you expect when you kept attacking an innocent kid?" Her breath hitched. You can't just..." I ended the call before she finished. That was the last conversation I had with Carla. She unleashed a barrage of text messages afterward, but I read none of them. My mother tried to broker peace, but I refused. Carla had wounded Lily. For that, there was no forgiveness. At home, Lily seemed lighter with each passing day, the shadow of Carla's words gradually lifting. She still needed reassurance, but the gaping fear had receded. Aaron and I carried on with our routines, movie nights, board games, weekend visits to the park, showing Lily that love was steady and unwavering. Over time, she brought up Aunt Carla less and less, as though Carla had become a vague, unpleasant memory. One evening, as I tucked Lily into bed, I noticed she'd pinned a new drawing above her desk. It showed 3 figures holding hands, me, Aaron, and Lily, with a bright sun overhead. In that picture, there was no empty space or separate corner for an ant who spat venom. It was just us, our family, strong and whole. After kissing Lily goodnight, I slipped downstairs where Aaron was waiting. He asked if I felt any regret about how things had unfolded. "Not about defending Lily," I said. "Part of me wishes Carla hadn't turned out this way, but she did. If she decides one day to apologize, truly apologize, that's on her. But even then, she can't fix what she broke." Aaron nodded, pulling me close. Through the open window, the night air drifted in, reminding me of that summer heat when I'd first sensed something was wrong. It felt like a lifetime ago. I pressed my face against his shoulder, letting relief wash over me. Carla's toxic influence had no place in our world anymore. On the living room table sat a photo album containing pictures of Lily's first months with us, smiling, holding a teddy bear, running through the backyard with unbridled glee. I thought of Carla's sneering comment, calling Lily a mistake. How blind she was to the miracle that child brought into our lives. How cruel to poke at Lily's deepest fear, using it for amusement. And so, Carla ended up alone. I heard through relatives that Mark refused all attempts at reconciliation. My parents lamented the dissolution of the marriage, but even they couldn't deny Carla's vicious behavior. Gradually, the phone calls from Carla's circle of friends dried up. I had blocked Carla on social media and found my life infinitely more peaceful without her daily drama. Sometimes, in my darker moments, I wondered how Carla had become so warped. We'd shared so many joyful memories as kids, but people can change, sometimes for the worse. All I knew was that Lily's safety and happiness came before everything else, including my relationship with my sister. One autumn afternoon, Lily and I raked leaves in the yard, forming big piles to leap into. She giggled as crisp orange and red leaves flew around. After a while, she paused, gazing at me with solemn eyes. "Mom, do you think Aunt Carla will ever like me?" My chest tightened. I set aside the rake. "It's not about liking you, sweetheart. You're an amazing person. If she can't see that, it's her loss. You've done nothing wrong." She thought about that, nodding slowly. I'm glad you and Dad keep me. I crouched down, hugging her, my heart full. We don't keep you, I said softly. We love you. You're our family. And in that quiet moment, the sharp edges Carla had left behind felt just a little duller. Lily's trust in me had survived a brutal test, and though the scars might linger, they were overshadowed by the warmth we built at home every single day. I sometimes hear snippets of Carla's life from our mother, how she filed for divorce after Mark left, how she resents me for turning everyone against her. But Carla chose her path when she decided to torment an innocent child and mock my motherhood. There is no forgiveness for that, only a cold satisfaction that Lily and I escaped her poisonous reach. Every once in a while, I recall our childhood, Carla and I jumping rope in the driveway, whispering under blankets, promising to always have each other's backs. A pang of regret stirs, but it vanishes as soon as I picture Lily's wide eyes, brimming with tears after Carla's hateful words. No, I won't forgive that betrayal. Not now, not ever. I glance at the photo of my family on our mantle. Aaron, Lily, and me laughing at the beach. Lily's hair is wind-tousled, her grin radiant. This is the bond that matters. Carla tried to poison it, and she failed. If she's out there, stewing in bitterness, that's her problem. I made my choice, to protect my daughter, to stand up for her in front of a whole wedding crowd, and to sever ties with anyone who would hurt her so callously. Some betrayals cut too deep for apologies to mend. Carla's was one of them. Lily's well-being was worth more than any fragile illusion of family unity. So I let Carla's wedding unravel, let her new marriage collapse under the weight of her cruelty, and kept my daughter safe in the process. I have no guilt. I have only pride in having done what any parent should do, defend the one who trusts us most in the world. And Lily? She's thriving. Her laughter fills our home. She's discovered a passion for art, covering her bedroom walls with sketches of animals and flowers. Sometimes she draws us holding hands under rainbows, the sun shining bright. Those pictures might seem simple, but to me, they're proof of the security she feels now. They're the evidence that Carla's hatred didn't win. I close my eyes at night knowing I did right by Lily. In a way, Carla's viciousness reminded me of how far I'd go to protect my child. There was no forgiveness for betrayal, only the sweet relief of ensuring that Lily's future was free of Carla's influence. If Carla ever wonders why her life fell apart, she need only recall the little girl she tormented and the mother who wouldn't stand for it. That's the truth of it. That's our story, exactly as it happened. No neat bow, no tearful reconciliation, just me, my husband, and our daughter, together, content and utterly unwilling to share our joy with someone who considered my precious child a mistake. Carla got her wedding, but her cruelty cost her everything else, and that is an ending I can live with.